It's very easy to judge people by their home, their yard, how kept, unkept they are, their finances, whether they've got a job or not, and so forth. In the time of materials where people admire people by how hard they work and conform to society. So the harder the person works, the more expensive the house, the more expensive the car, the nicer clothes they wear, the designer clothes, the nicer gear they have around their home, and also the tidiness of their home and their section. The many towns and cities have these um, these awards they give out for the tidiest section and the tidiest street and all this sort of stuff. And the whole idea is to get us to conform to society, to buy the best, and to spend, like, in order for you to get the best car, you've got to spend 5 to 10 years working very hard to keep it, to maintain it, to buy petrol for it, and to go, and to keep up the impression that you're a wonderful member of society instead of the real words, which are a conformer of society. So it's very easy, like a couch, when you're watching sports and the person sits on the chair and they call them an armchair critic, and they sit there yelling at the referee, yelling at the members of the game because in the sports game their team's failing. And they criticise them or they laugh at the other team and things like that. So it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to assume superiority and that we're a better person or the other people aren't up to our standards, when this whole system of society is based on your worth, is based on materialism, was based on your wages, your efforts, etc. When you go to the home of a person who's depressed, it might be very, very easy to look at that person's home and say to yourself immediately, that person is unkept, their home is a mess, it's either a mess inside or it's a mess outside, the lawn's unkept, the grass is growing too long, and so on and so forth. And therefore, that person must be a shocking person. It's easy to assume. And then later on, when that person commits suicide, it's easy to say, well, they were always a loser. It was obvious they were going to kill themselves. I mean, they're a loser. And I've heard people actually talk like that. And it's not very nice. So it's easy to assume, it's easy to judge, it's easy to guide. And that's where you have this saying by Jesus, look at the plank in your own eye. Look at who you are and what you're doing. There's a girl I know who's very, very judgmental, and she's suffering mental illness and anxiety and depression and the like. And she, from her protected home, which is very flash, very expensive, has other people do stuff for her. They mow her lawns, they clean the section up, they do everything, basically. And then she looks at other people who've got messy sections and she judges them. She looks down on them. Yet she doesn't do anything to clean her own. That's being a hypocrite. That's judging others, not seeing the plank in your own eye. So take the plank out of your own eye and see your own life. Who you are. What if we judge a person on our own effort in the exact same area? Just how bad are they? I mean, if you're surrounded by people who've got money, who do the work for you, who give you the creature comforts of home, who look after you and pay all your basic bills and stuff, and then you look at someone who works on a low wage and who suffered a lot of depression and struggle in life, who's been victimized, maybe the character assassination, because it's ongoing, it never stops. You never know when you walk into a store whether people are going to say bad things to you. I heard a car, I was just checking it wasn't in the driveway. And you don't know. So that's what it's constant anxiety, it's constant depression, it's constant shame for stuff you never did. It's constant, it doesn't end. So you have people like that who get up one day and think, oh well, the world hates me, why should I bother? And people don't come visit me, why should I clean up the house? Why should I clean up the yard? The depression and anxiety does that to you. It brings you down really bad. And then you get the person like, as in the case of this young female, where everyone's doing everything for her. She can look at a person like, say, me, or someone who's suffering mental illness or depression or sadness, and just say, oh my gosh, look at them. They're not up to my standard. I'm clearly, I got it better off than them. But she's judging her better offness based on what other people are doing for her, not by what she's doing. So she does not have the right to judge anyone else unless it's what she's doing. So if she's getting out there and mowing her front lawn, then which is the lawn that everyone sees, if she gets out there and mows her front lawn, then she's a person of who can look at my lawn and say, your front lawn's not tidy. Because hers is always tidy because she makes effort, not someone else. See what I'm getting at? So people judge people according to their own perception of their own perfection, of their own pride, ego, arrogance, and hypocritical thinking. I judge you on this particular point. They don't sit there and then they don't think, what am I in this particular point? What do I do on this particular point? Do I do anything? Then I can't judge the other person who at least cleans half their section up when I clean none of my section, my yard. I do nothing, and this other person does half of it. So at least they're doing half more than I do. Other people may do it for me, but is it because I'm paying for that, or is it because I'm in a position where people have created a comfort zone for me, and they're all doing everything for me because I just don't get off my butt and do it? What is your excuse for not doing what you should do? It reminds me of mental illness and Henry Ford, who went in for his appendix. Back in those days, 1950s, I think 1940s, he got his appendix as it was going to explode. They put him in hospital, and back then you stayed in hospital for 7 days or more for an appendix. Well, he was going crazy. The hell prayed him on the first day. The second day, he was starting to get really fidgety. Third day, he was going crazy. So he just put on his clothes and went back to work. He said, laying in bed, it was sitting at a desk. It made no difference. He was, at least one situation, he was being productive. The other one, he was doing nothing. And he was a very productive person. So he felt that he was better at work. And that changed the whole entire medical system on appendix. Now you only stay in the hospital for 3 days. And when I got my appendix out, that was what happened to me. In the mental health thing, people come in and they do work for the people suffering mental illness, like depression or anxiety, and that sort of thing. People, maybe it would have been better if they'd had them and made them do stuff. Like when my ex-wife left in 2004, I was forced, because I was scared someone was going to take my children off me, to go to the stores, and I forced myself to walk in and get the groceries. I forced myself to walk to town. I forced myself to say hello to people. When I was shaking, I was nervous, I was terrified of them. But I forced myself to do it because if I didn't go to those meetings, we would lose the house and I'd lose my children. And I'd be very in a very bad mental state if that happened. Because if I lost them, they would go to a family that had history of crime, drugs, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, etc., etc. It was the ex-wife's family. So I was fighting desperately to stop my children going to that environment. So maybe in this day and age, the better way to deal with your mental illness is to care for your own home yourself. Not have other people do it. Get out there, mow your own lawns. Get out there and get down on your knees and do your own gardening. See, people can judge me about that. So I do get out there and dig my own gardens. They may not be perfect. The back section may not be perfect, but I still do it myself. Not like them who watch and say and pay someone else or a lawn mowing company to come in and do it, or they get their friends to do it, or the people who care for them to do it, or the people that even if you're boarding in a boarding situation, I couldn't survive in a boarding situation where I didn't go out and clean the section up. I'd just say to the people around the house, look, I'll mow the lawn this weekend, and they'll say, but you're only boarding here, and I'd say, look, I just want to help out. I just can't, I'd end up mowing the lawns every week without getting paid. It's just, I've got to do stuff out there in the world, do stuff. And it may not be perfect, but hey, that's life. And it's kind of reminds me of the farms. You can go into the city, and if your house's grass is too long, people are sticking their nose up at you. I used to have a neighbour who used to yell at me over it. He used to threaten me over the fence because my grass was long. He used to have fits at me. And we had a couple of round close calls where we were going to have a huge punch up. And he was a fanatic for lawn that long, perfect lawns. Whereas I didn't care. I was doing 6 on, 2 off at Kinley. I was exhausted every time I came home on the weekends. Sometimes I'd leave the lawn for 4 weeks. I didn't care. And the back section would be like high. And the kids and I, they were like 3 or 4, and we'd play in it and roll around in the grass and play with the dog, and we'd all have a whale of a time. And while he was spitting over the fence and yelling at me when he'd see me, because he was yelling at me and threatening me, it just made me more stubborn. And so I just turned around and grinned at him, knowing it was pissing him off. So, yeah. I'm a bit like that. Anyway, so we need to understand that when we judge people, when we look at people, and we say bad things about people according to their clothing, their house, their section, how unkept they are, or how kept their section is, or unkept it is, look at ourselves in the exact same position and say, do we do those things? Do we, what's our role in what we judge other people on? And we might say, this person doesn't do, maybe we judge them on their job, yet we don't work. See what I'm getting at? Or maybe we judge them as a parent, but we don't put in as much effort as they do. We might say that they're single and no one wants them, and yet we're always out hunting for relationships, and all our relationships are always failing. We might say they're a bad fighter, yet we've never fully seen them in their true natural ability to fight. You see what I'm getting at? So we're judging people by our very limited views and our opinions of what the situation is. So you could go to a person's house who was about to commit suicide the night before. They're in really bad mental state. But you know what happens when people turn up? You smile, you put on an act, you pretend everything's fine, yet your house is a mess. Your life is a mess. Mentally, you're screwed. And so therefore, your house and your life is a reflection of the suffering you're suffering inside that other people won't help you with. It's just they keep you suffering. And so you're not getting the help from others. You're not getting any love, compassion, or friendship. They're attacking you. So it's a reflection of your life. And then people come up and they see you. They're like, oh, yeah, loser. Oh, yeah. Look what he does. Oh, yeah. This person's worthless. Why do people commit suicide? Because of people who judge them, who treat them badly, who assume their superiority over them, who assume that they're better people, who assume that they've got it all and they know it all, and they're not looking at the plank in their own eyes and not looking at who and what they are before they judge other people. It's important to understand who you are, what you are, and it's important to see yourself in the same. There's empathy. Empathy is when you look at the person. One of the things that used to really get me was once our welfare office. There was a lot of solo mums at one stage working at once. They'd been on the poverty line. They'd been struggling. They were without food for their children. They went through hell for their children and for their lives, and trying to keep their house, keep food on the table, etc., etc. Then, when they became case managers and, and they had a job, and single mothers would come and see them, or single parents would come and see them when they were in desperate situations, these women would pick at them and say, well, what are you doing about it? And then make their lives hell. No empathy. They became very proud workers in their job, and they forgot what it was like for them. There was a woman here who is working for the National Party here in Conservative Party for politics, and she was a single mother. She went through hell as a single mother, but once she became the head of welfare, oh my gosh, she made it really hard for single mothers, single parents. So no empathy. They're not seeing themselves in the same situation. And even if you are rich and you're driving down the street and you see someone struggling with an old bomb of a car, not like your flash new car, are you looking at that person and saying to yourself, oh, what a loser? Or are you sitting there saying, oh, geez, I wonder what they're going through? And maybe you could stop and give them a hand. Maybe you could give them a wave. Maybe you could say something nice to them. The difference between you and other people is how you see yourself in those other people, how you judge them. That's the difference. And that's what you can figure out whether you're a good person or whether you're a bad person by the blink in your eye and how you go past someone's house and say, look at your long lawn. And then you think, well, do I mow my lawn or do I pay someone to mow my lawn? Or do other people just come around and mow my lawn for me? What effort do you make in the areas you judge other people? It's something to think about.